Good afternoon, everyone. In the East Pacific Oscillation, when it goes negative, cold lower 48. This is 10 standard deviations from normal. Massive cold front. May snow Central Park, tying 1977 record. If it snows tonight, it will break that. Snowier May than February in New York. Even snow down in North Carolina. This is why the mainstream media needed to cover this so heavily, because record cold in Virginia, Washington, D.C., all the way to New York. You can't hide that. South America below normal, but they're going into winter. That would be expected. Groundhog cold day in Australia. Cold continues day after day. In Europe, from this point forward, agriculture frozen. With the majority of the world's workforce working from home, a useful tool to protect yourself and scramble your computer's identity. A virtual private network. You can head over to virtualshield.com, and in the download tab, I'm going to choose Firefox. And click Install Now to add the Virtual Shield add-on. It's just that easy. And get started with your free 30-day trial. Install it, click Connect. You'll see the shield turn from red to green. And you'll see how from my initial service provider, I was able to even change my IP. Virtual Shield Network protected. And during the month of May, Virtual Shield wants to offer 50% off all VPN plans because more of us than ever are working from our homes. The link's in the description box below. And when you see Kirk Heinz talking about the biggest East Pacific oscillation drop seen in his career, as well as other weather forecasts talking about how rare this is, this 10 standard deviation drop. And the East Pacific Oscillation, well, when it goes negative, it produces mild weather in Alaska, but it pushes extreme cold down into the lower 48, as well as Canada. And I thought, well, how much is 10 standard deviations? About this much. So you would expect massive changes, and we're not even into the full brunt of the cold yet. Still a couple days away as this moves through May 11th, 12th, and 13th. And with all the hundreds and hundreds of record cold temperatures snapped and smashed through the U.S. and hundreds in Europe, now we can start to add the snow totals in as well here. National Weather Service New York talking about it's a snowier May than February. And the different climate sites around the state, because the snow pushed all the way down into North Carolina, record cold temperatures even as far south as Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee. But once you see these weather anomalies in New York City, you know the mainstream media is going to have to pick it up. There's no way to mask it and make it disappear. If it was a local event in the middle of Kansas, you wouldn't have heard about this. And because May snow tied this 1977 record for latest snowfall in Central Park, had to go out across the airwaves. Now, if it snows tonight or the next day, this is going to break the all-time latest record ever for snowfall. And that goes back to 1880. As well, Dulles International recorded an all-time May record low temperature of 9.5 degrees Celsius below zero. Now remember the metric conversion, 0 degrees Celsius is 32 Fahrenheit. So when we're coming down, we're into the high teens with that, minus 9.5 C. Old record, minus 7.9. So a nice, healthy overage on that. And the Washington Post pulling it out here, historic blast of polar vortex sets scores of records. Well, it's actually more than 1,000 now. But very honest journalism here. It's one of the most prolific late-season cold outbreaks on record. The New York Post has to follow up, obviously, because in New York City, in Central Park, they're going to have to cover that, or else people would ask why they're not covering it. First time in over half a century snow is falling. Thought it was supposed to be super hot by now, but, you know. Guardian, even over in the UK, picking it up. Here comes the polar vortex. America's northeast brace for record rare spring snow, and also across Europe, record cold and snow as well. Seems to be a hemispheric thing. Even CNN picking it up. Weak polar vortex will help usher in record cold air to the eastern half of the country. Significant snow could fall across the interior of New England. You mean record snow? How much snow would it have been anyway? They said it could snow, and even on the bottom here, like the header that you get when you go into a search engine, weak polar vortex will usher in record cold as a nor'easter develops this weekend. Okay, great. This is about how much snow fell that they didn't report on. These full 8 inches here. They did say it was snow, though, so they got that part right. And speaking of Europe, as I was talking about and following the cold records smashing, shattering, and just falling left, right, and center across Europe, the inversion in temperature there, tornadoes. From Germany to Ireland, and then this one today in Belgium. Over here in Scotland, on May 9th, incredibly high winds accompanying the front, this polar blast that swept over the UK and is in Europe right now, damaging agriculture. Out on the Skye's coastline here, incredible image, really remote. Double beauty in the sky. It's almost like a lens saying, hey, focus in the center of the center. What do you see down in that rock formation there if you zoom in? And as I said, it seems to be a hemispheric thing, but Electroverse picking this up. The month of May brings a record, sometimes historic cold to both hemispheres. And I thought that's really interesting. Let's look. I reported on this a couple weeks ago here, this polar cold, all-time record snow, earliest snows, deepest snows, records dropping left, right, and center across Australia. 21st, record cold up in the outback. And as that proceeds up to the north and east, that's going to rip through Cairns with record cold temperatures. Seems like a never-ending cold Groundhog Day in Australia. Although, granted, they are going into winter, as well as South America here. Today, really early, it's just the first days of getting into fall down there. Smashing cold. And there's an excessive drought happening as well. Heading up out of southern Africa, Chile Central, Namib Desert, wow, chilly. South Africa looking toasty warm. But over the last days, from Canada all the way down into Mexico, tornadoes, hail, snow, sleet, record cold, wind, and all the mixes that you could think of. But out west, it's a few degrees above normal, so watch for the trend of the news to move out there, especially in Alaska, where it's about 12 degrees Celsius above normal. See, that's the inversion from that East Pacific oscillation, where it gets warm in Alaska, but it pushes that front down into the lower 48 and Canada. And as Europe grinds through this next week of well below normal temperatures, even down into Morocco and North Africa, where I've been pinpointing that agriculture is really starting to thrive down in North Africa. Record grain production in Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Egypt, Chad, Mauritania, rainfall patterns and shifting off the West African monsoon. The reason I'm focusing so much on the agriculture in the U.S. and Europe is, the old adage, May 1st was supposed to be the very safe date to plant, but this year has been a little bit warm in the spring, so a lot of farmers and people doing gardens jumped out in front of that, planted early, and then whoosh, here's this cold. So there's going to be a lot of damage. And, nature itself bloomed and budded early this year, and these below freezing temperatures are doing no good for our fruit and vegetable production across the globe. You're going to have to plant your own. Kale, anyone? TrueLeafMarket.com, heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on the planet. Victory garden, whatever kind of garden you'd like to term it. You're going to have to grow more of your own food moving forward, especially with the supply chain breakdowns. Links in the description box below, and it's another way to support the Adapt 2030 channel. I thank you for watching, and I will see you next video. Remember to put a hat on over the next few days, because it's going to remain chilly.